everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, I want to discuss a subject that has been on my mind a lot lately: permanent collar alternatives. I once made a video on this years and years ago, and because it is both embarrassing and ancient, I thought now would be a great time to revisit the subject because I have so much more experience, and I also have a few new tips and ideas to share with you all. And I'm actually planning to make quite a few videos in the coming weeks about collars, collaring ceremonies, and the like, but this seemed like it would be the best topic to start with. So, to be clear, for this video, I'm going to be focusing on power exchange relationship collars, often referred to as collaring collars or permanent collars, though not all collars people use in power exchange are these types of collars. These are also different from play collars or bondage collars, and while some people do use play collars as permanent collars as well, that is pretty rare in the modern scene since we have so many other options and they are both quite popular and quite visible. The kind of relationship collar that most people think of in the community is a little bit like this. They usually think of a permanent 24/7 collar. It's a thin metal circlet. I'm not sure if that's the proper terminology, but it's like a very, very narrow, thin band of metal. And it's usually made of either stainless steel or titanium, and it's between about 5 to 10 millimeters thick. They typically lock with some kind of discrete mechanism, or they may close with a strong magnet. These days, you can buy cheap versions easily from stores on Etsy that come in a rainbow of colors, from literally oil slick rainbow to black, gold, rose gold, and so on. Big name brands like Eternity Collars and formerly Ring of Steel helped to popularize the look over the last few decades. The big selling point for these collars is that they were supposedly inconspicuous and could be worn around vanilla family and coworkers without anyone being the wiser to your relationship. They are certainly less in your face than a big leather posture collar or a set of leather locking cuffs. So I think they're generally going in the right direction, but are they entirely invisible? That's gonna vary a lot depending on the person. And another selling point is the symbolic history behind these collars. A 24/7 metal locking collar was not originally the default expectation in even high-level power exchange relationships. But as usual, we have the internet to thank for cross-pollination of different ideas amongst various kink subcultures. Some will claim it's an idea borrowed from Roman slave collars, but the more direct inspiration seems to be from the Turian collar described in the John Norman Gore novels. Quote, "The Turian collar lies loosely on the girl, a round ring. It fits so loosely that, when grasped in a man's fist, the girl can turn within it." Quite the vivid description there. I can see why some people were really into gore novels back in the day, as well as in the current day too. And if there was one thing that early internet role players loved, it was talking about collars. Not much has really changed, has it? Though the gore subculture has always been rather separate from the rest of the BDSM community, if they could be considered part of the BDSM community at all, which they don't always think of themselves as such. One way or the other, the idea of a slim metal ring as a permanent collar jumped the pond, and it has stuck around ever since. Not only because it was fashionable and simple, but also because it seemed to be more discreet than the other options available at the time, as I mentioned before. Emphasis on seemed to be, though. So I can only speak for my own experience on this one, but metal locking collars, especially the ones that are a little bit thicker, are not really all that sneaky. Even my relatively petite, approximately 6 millimeter collar would routinely get looks and long stares. Not just from people in the community either, but folks I definitely did not want attention from, like family and coworkers. I've shared before in this channel how I have had people come up to me and ask repeated, pointed questions about my necklace, clearly knowing it was not a necklace. So, it wasn't ever dangerous, but it did get invasive and a little bit scary. Maybe things have changed since the internet is so condensed and so public now. I don't think this is really something we can blame 50 Shades of Grey for, I'm sorry to say, but a lot of people seem to know what a collar is, more than they did in 1982, and they often do not have very positive feelings about it. The reaction can range from, oh, it's so inappropriate to wear a symbol of your sex life at your job as a nurse, secretary, hairdresser, whatever you are, to, oh my gosh, I need to save you. To quote from one story I read on Reddit, there is a big difference between don't notice and politely ignore. I've known many people who think they are being subtle and are horrified when they learn. It's common knowledge what they are up to in their private lives. If you are in a role where that is information you wouldn't want someone to guess about you, then you should find something else. If it's something you are fine with denying if called out and there wouldn't be consequences, then do what you feel called to. I will say that years ago, I had a fantastic working relation with a boss who I considered a mentor. He respected me and opened a lot of doors for me in our industry. However, when he discovered I was polyamorous, he became convinced I was being abused. He started trying to save me from my life choices, and when that failed, he stopped trusting me to do my job properly. Ultimately, I had to leave a job I loved because it was clear that as long as he questioned my judgment, we couldn't work together. While I chose to be open in my polyamory in the modern era of my life, being outed for BDSM would make the job I do impossible. So I am extremely careful to avoid it. And just to really drive it home that discreet collars are not all they're cracked up to be, do I need to remind anyone of the viral video where a girl was outed at her place of work because someone filmed her, since the person had noticed that she had a metal collar on and, called her out for it? I'm not going to show the video here to avoid contributing to the problem, but if you know, you know. So, all of that being said, there's lots of reasons why some people need to or would like to wear something other than a ring of steel around their neck. Maybe it is for privacy concerns, like we just talked about. Maybe it's because of their place of work having rules about jewelry, or they don't like the aesthetic of it, or having a metal collar around their neck would be a sensory nightmare. Or maybe the person doesn't like the symbolism of it, and it just makes them uncomfortable to think about wearing something like that 24/7. Or maybe they've worn a similar collar already in a past relationship and want something different this time that's unique to what their current relationship is. There's lots of valid reasons to want to have another viable option. And because collars are so ubiquitous and so popular, it is simply not often talked about that there are, in fact, other options for your relationship besides a collar. So let's talk about what those things are exactly. Number one is alternative jewelry. The first and easiest option is obviously just to use some regular jewelry. You can engrave it with something that is meaningful to you, for example, doing an engraving on the inside band of a ring, or you can get a charm or a pendant with your dominant partner's initial on it, for a bracelet or a necklace. You can also get something with a gemstone that reflects your kink colors, like pink or baby blue for CGL or DDLG, or black for sadomasochism, or if you're a pet player, picking something that matches your pet play gear. Maybe your partner is a daddy and they have everything in green, so you wear a green heart charm on something. For littles and pets in particular, I love the idea of a charm bracelet that you can add to year over year as you renew your contract and your relationship grows. You can fill it with whatever charms resonate with you in that relationship, maybe year on year, right? So maybe one year it's a princess crown, another it's a pet paw because you discovered your kitten side, or maybe the year after that's teddy bears because you got really into collecting teddy bears with your partner when you went to, an arcade or something like that. If you prefer something more masculine and rugged than a shiny charm bracelet or a pendant, many people also like to wear rope or leather cords. These can come in a variety of colors and also sizes, and while not typically as durable as metal, they can be a good transition choice or a better option if you want something that's meant to be removed more often. If you can't wear metal, silicone rings are another colorful alternative. And the best part about all of these options is they are accessible at basically any price point, and they aren't a permanent commitment. And because they are pieces of vanilla jewelry for the most part, they are going to seem vanilla to anyone outside of your relationship because that's what they are. So, win 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 in my book in terms of ease of access, hideability, all of the important factors we want to consider for an alternative. And especially also because you can make them quite personalized fairly easily. You're not going to have the same charm bracelet as the other little at the munch has, you know? But moving on, the next step up, number 2 in permanency from plain jewelry and locking collars are piercings. While I always recommend going to an AAP piercer, if your partner is qualified, they can also do the piercing for you, though there are lots of qualified piercers in the kink scene, so if you're worried about that, just ask in a local Discord group or FetLife group if you want to be pointed in the right direction. Again, I really encourage you to see a professional, but some people do have their partner do the piercing for them. And this can mean doing anything from a really simple ear piercing with a meaningful stud design, like a horseshoe for a pony player, all the way over to more intense genital piercings to reflect a relationship based in something like control or cuckolding or hot wifing or anything like that. While piercings can be removed, they are more of a commitment than a ring or bracelet and can leave a permanent fistula behind, which is the flesh tunnel that a healing piercing forms. I recently got my ears redone and they didn't even have to re-pierce me because even though I haven't worn earrings in 15 plus years, the fistulas are still there and they were fully intact. Don't rush into this unless you are fairly confident you will like it long term or will be able to give the piercing new meaning should the relationship end. Or maybe you're someone who is just comfortable with healed, empty piercing holes, and to each their own if that's you. If you are considering a piercing, I recommend doing additional research on healing times and experiences. Placements like the belly button and many oral and cartilage piercings can have extended healing times or be quite finicky to heal. If your kink involves a lot of rough body play, manipulation, wrestling, and the like, a delicate piercing that takes 11 months to heal may not be the best choice for you. And finally, if you want to test out a piercing before you commit to it, many placements can be faked with faux jewelry or temporarily glued on with eyelash glue. And moving on, for number 3, we have the next level of permanency, and that would be tattoos. Tattoos are a very popular choice, especially in a fantasy context. It can be really hot to think about being permanently marked on your body by your partner in a way that everyone can see. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's hot to you, but you like the idea of it being hidden and secret, like something only you and your partner share. Maybe tattoos carry a specific roleplay connotation for you if you're into succubus roleplay or prison role play or animal role play with barnyard animals, for example. There's a lot of reasons why people like tattoos, but just as in a vanilla relationship, you should be very cautious when getting a tattoo for a relationship. If this is something you are considering, you have a couple of intermediate options to try out first that I would highly, highly recommend if you're not totally certain you will absolutely and forever love a tattoo or would be okay with laser removal or a cover-up at some point. You can try drawing on a design with a skin marker, especially if you let the ink sit for a bit before rubbing it off with an alcohol wipe. This can leave faint lines for several days. You can also try out temporary tattoos. There are numerous brands these days that advertise longer-lasting temporary tattoos, though their design choices are limited and I cannot speak to how well they work. Inkbox sells a pen, which is supposed to be like a longer lasting skin marker. Some people also opt for henna instead of a marker, though I would be cautious about this one for a couple of reasons. Well, and of course, if henna is not part of your culture, I would do some further research for yourself and see if using it is in line with your values. Many people, especially people who enjoy using henna in their home cultures, do not consider using it to be a form of cultural appropriation by itself because the use of henna was once widespread and found everywhere from Rome to Egypt to Morocco to India. But other people do not share this view, especially if designs are copied without the recognition of the original culture that created that design. That's just something that's always good to think about. But regardless of which temporary method you choose to go with, I would give yourself a few trial runs first. Just kind of take everything day by day, maybe try something out for like a couple of days to a week, and really make sure this is something that you like, that feels right, that you can cover easily if you need to for work in the future, and so on. Then, if you feel good, you can go ahead and start considering some more permanent options. Names, initials, important relationship dates like a collaring ceremony date or a contract signing date or the date of your first scene, maybe even something like a barcode or a so-called slave registry number are popular options. Same with signs that represent the nature of your relationship, like I've mentioned a couple of times now. Things like a kitten paw for a kitten play relationship or a feather duster for a service-based relationship. Keep in mind when picking your design that while laser tattoo removal is an option, as I've said, it is oftentimes quite painful, expensive, and may not be able to fully remove the tattoo in the future. Covert locations like behind the ear, on the torso, or under where a bra or swimsuit would cover are good options to consider as well. And remember, it only has to be big if you want it to be big. I think a lot of people think, oh, I want a tattoo that's like this, and it's like really honking and big and totally out there. But you can get a little teeny tiny size stylized bee behind one ear. If that's what you want to do, go for it. You're not more of a sub because you get a tattoo the size of a dollar bill instead of a penny. Smaller tattoos can actually be better if you like the hidden secret only the two of us know about aspect of permanent marks. Plus, if you don't take up that much space, you can always add on more in the future. The more you get of a tattoo at once, less real estate you have for other future tattoos. That's just kind of how it works. But moving on, for number 4, we have scarification. If you like the design aspect of tattoos, but you're a really hardcore masochist and you want something yet still even more difficult to remove, another option is scarification. This is an advanced procedure and not available from professionals in all areas. For example, in Oregon where I live, scarification and dermal implant procedures are illegal. If you want the best results, though, I highly recommend going to a professional whenever possible. Read reviews, go to specialty forums. They will be able to tell you based on their experience what you can expect, walk you through the design process, and ensure you're going to have a safe, clean procedure. While many different forms of scarification do exist, the kind I'm referring to right now is a sort done with a scalpel. With professionals, this can also mean peeling away areas of skin and leaving them bare, which is also much more intense than your average kink cutting or needle plate scene. So if you think you can handle this because you've done some cutting with a scalpel before during a kink scene, think twice because it can be very different. Most professionals also won't scar people without other previous body mod experience, so keep that in mind too. If you've never even had a piercing, they're probably not going to do this one on you. And how you scar can be something of a crapshoot. It might end up being hyper or hypopigmented, it might be raised, depressed, it can be flat, or you may develop keloid scarring, which you may need to address with additional follow-up medical treatment. While someone might not immediately identify the scar as a kink thing, if it's in a visible spot, it will definitely be noticeable. Especially professionally done, more intense pieces will be extremely difficult to cover up, if at all, in the future, and the scars cannot be removed as easily as tattoos, if at all. So, make sure you really want this on your body forever in the way you want it right now before you pursue it. Some people also choose to do more of a DIY method with scarification with their partner, using simple single cuts and more stylized design like you'd see with like artistic cutting, rather than peeling away sections of skin. This has the advantage of being more intimate than what you would normally get out of something in a body mod studio, but I would not recommend doing this unless you and your partner are already experienced with blood play, you've done it together before, you know how you scar, and you're willing to take on the risk of healing such a piece that might not end up how you envisioned it to be. If this is something that interests you, I highly, 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 highly recommend, I cannot emphasize this enough, I highly recommend doing a lot of research and looking up info from the body mod world to get a better sense of this procedure and what you're walking into, because this is something that is more likely than not going to be with you for life, for better or for worse. And if you're going to be carrying that memory forever, you want to make sure it's going to be a positive, healthy, clean experience. Anyways, on that note, we have finally, I believe we're on number 5 now, I think I lost track. The final one, we have branding. Some scarification techniques done by body modification professionals are actually also branding techniques. This can range from the comparatively mild and possibly temporary, like cell popping, ice cube branding, or violet wand branding, which is more done by people in the kink scene than professionals, to the extreme, like strike branding. Cautery and electrosurgical brandings are probably the most popular options with the greatest likelihood of achieving the desired effect. These techniques are less removable or coverable than tattoos, but they can be more precise than other scarification techniques. If this is something that interests you, you're going to have to do further research on it beyond what I can cover in this simple video. I have known several people in the scene who have received strike brands before. All of them were slaves and very intense masochists for the most part, and they had had very long-term relationships, so they had done previously seemingly extreme things to prove the depth of their relationship. And all of them have always told me that it was way more intense than they expected. And for a lot of them, it was not something they would ever choose to repeat if they were given the choice. They're happy with it now, but they would not go back for a round 2, which is saying something for somebody in the kink scene, okay? I'd recommend trying out one of the more temporary methods first before going on the scarification or the branding route for that reason, because, again, even if you are a masochist, this is a whole other level here that most people are not going to be getting any kind of pleasure out of. It's about the relationship, not really like getting something out of the pain in that way you might normally have from a scene. I also want to note that not all symbols of relationship commitment have to be as extreme as burns or tattoos. If you don't want a symbol of a relationship as a body design or jewelry, you don't have to have one. Some people keep symbols on their keychains, like dog collar tags, or they wear a "what would my dom want me to do" meditation bracelet, and they keep it on them at all times. For something that's invisible and pretty unique, I've even seen people opt to get subdermal microchip implants. I mean, talk about an opportunity for who, cows, and animal role players, am I right? And yeah, so up to this point in the video, I've talked a lot about what submissives can wear to show their devotion to a dominant partner. And this is where we get into something I don't think I've ever really covered in a video before. But what about if a dominant wants to also have a symbol of the relationship too? And potentially, maybe this could be controversial to some people who believe that they only need to have a sign of devotion coming from the submissive. That's what is supposed to happen. But I do think it is really beautiful if someone, even yes, a dominant partner, wants to show the mutuality of their relationship. The classic choice here is often a key worn around the neck or kept on a key ring. Sometimes it is purely symbolic, but other times it is a key that goes to the submissive's collar, bracelet, anklet, or something below the belt, if you know what I'm talking about. But if you don't have one of those, there are still options. I've heard of partners getting matching tattoos or wearing a ring or earrings that match what their partner's chosen symbol is. For example, if you got a tattoo of a barcode, your partner might have a matching keyring of that same barcode. Or if you did a symbolic scarification scene with a moon design, the partner might wear a ring with a moon or a sun design. You can really pick whatever makes the most sense to you. It could be completely matchy-matchy or two opposite but paired symbols like a sun and moon or fire and water to show kind of that dom-sub relationship where one person is receiving the authority, one person is giving up the authority, that kind of thing. And I would really encourage more doms to look into getting something to reflect the relationship, even if it is really super simple. I find it's a helpful reminder of how you both contribute to the relationship. And it's not just a one-sided thing where the sub is always giving and giving and giving, and the dom is only ever just receiving. Or at least that's not going to be the case 90% of the time. It's much more mutual than I think a lot of people will always stop and think about. But ultimately, a collar is not what makes a relationship. A collar should be a reflection of the devotion and commitment and joy that already exists there. And you don't need to have a collar to have that commitment. Is it nice? Definitely, yeah. Especially in a world that elevates relationships with signs of commitment over those that don't, like married relationships versus unmarried ones, or people with big, honkin' expensive wedding rings over those that don't wear a ring at all. It's not wrong to want something that other people get to have, especially when people get to go around wearing their "we are legally given permission by God morally to be able to touch each other in the biblical sense." Rings that are saying those things are not something that society really ever thinks twice about. But where you need more subtlety, a color alternative may make more sense than something that's like really big and kind of show offy. Or possibly, maybe you don't really need an alternative at all. Sometimes what you need is just a shared set of vows, a poem you wrote together, or a piece of art you made together. And then you keep that framed, preserved in a special private place or displayed in the front of your home, right next to the door if you want to. And all of those options can be just as, if not more meaningful than a collar. So do what feels right to you. Be that wearing a gold locking collar or wearing no symbol at all. Honoring what would be authentic to the relationship is so, so much more important than following a trend or having what others have. There's a story I always remember from Fat Life that is about someone who wore a collar every day for years and years and years and years. They never took it off, never had to take it off. And then one day when they went through an airport, they had to take it off for the first time. And they remarked, even though the collar wasn't on, they could still feel its presence. And I think that's something to keep in mind going forward. You don't need a collar to feel the presence of your dominant partner. There are other ways to feel it. And also, as the dominant partner, you can have a symbol to help you feel more connected to your sub if you want to. It is nice to have reminders, but it doesn't have to be anything specific or it doesn't have to be anything physical either. That's really what I wanted to talk about today, because I know collar is something people are really, really into. But if you don't want one, if you can't wear one, it doesn't make you less of a sub, less of a slave, whatever label you use for your relationship. It's all good. That's all I really wanted to cover here. So thank you all so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts about this one in a comment down below. Do you wear a collar? Have you ever considered an alternative? Have you once worn a collar and then decided to wear an alternative? Or have you never worn a collar at all? You don't really get the hubbub. I would love to know your thoughts and feelings in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this, you're not already, please do subscribe because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of different kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do that is with Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support over there, thank you so, so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.